Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this exclusive economic zone and continental shelf environmental effects bill at its first reading. It is very appropriate that this week, Conservation Week, we introduce this bill. It should have been done under Labour. All New Zealanders are keen to protect and conserve our natural environment. We understand that our natural resources are precious and they offer us opportunities, but they also impose responsibilities. We Blue-Greens in the National Party believe that the economy and the environment can and must go hand in hand. It was interesting to hear Labour saying that the continental shelf designation only happened in 2008 and nothing could have been done before then. That is absolute nonsense. They certainly could have introduced legislation from the EEZ and just added the information about the continental shelf later. There was more drilling done under Labour in 2005, 2006 and 2007 than there has been done in the last 3 years. We have robust legislation in the form of the Resource Management Act to care for our environment on land, but that legislation only covers 12 miles into the ocean. The EEZ, that's the area of sea, seabed and subsoil, which goes from the 12 miles to 200 nautical miles offshore where New Zealand has jurisdiction. As we've said, it even extends to some places beyond those 200 nautical miles because of the continental shelf. But that would not have stopped legislation being done under Labour while they were in power. New Zealand has one of the biggest EEZs in the world. It's an area of ocean which is 20 times the size of our land mass. And up until now, there has been no legislation to protect it. We are introducing this bill because it is our responsibility to manage this huge area well. This legislation will fill a much-needed gap and will give effect to New Zealand's obligations under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea to manage and protect the natural resources of this area. The new law will work in tandem with existing laws to manage the EEZ and the environmental effects of activities like petroleum exploration and mining. We do not want to see in New Zealand the sort of environmental disaster that we saw in the Gulf of Mexico. And I'd just like to make a point that one of the reasons that this bill is being introduced later in our term is because after that disaster we commissioned a review to make sure that we got it right and learned from what had happened before. This bill sets up a general framework for our regulatory system and will make the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, responsible for consenting, monitoring and the enforcement of activities within the EEZ. It will set up a consenting regime to regulate activities and it will require public notification and consultation on regulations and consents. All consents will require an environmental impact assessment and there will be the responsibility of consent holders to avoid, remedy or mitigate any adverse environmental effects. The enforcement of penalties will be aligned with the Resource Management Act. This is good legislation. We've developed it responsibly and it's taken a little longer than we hoped because of additional research and because of that interest in what happened in the Gulf of Mexico. But we've worked on it steadily and responsibly. We've heard from iwi that it's too fast. We're now hearing from Labour that it's too slow, but I think it's probably in the right time. New Zealand's EEZ needs to be managed well, and this legislation will set that framework to do just that. It will give us world's best environmental practice, and I commend this bill to the House.
Honourable Shane Jones.